As the invasion against the Techies begins, it's clear that there are a few things that need to be taken into effect. 1. The Techies' territory is massive. Essentially the size of all the other known species, to include human, and just a little bit more. This means it's going to be a very protracted conflict due to all the targets. And once one sector is taken, one has to be secured, which means the sectors around it need to be fully taken. Which means for every target taken, there's at least 2 more that you have to take. Warfare seems to be falling back into the fundamentals in this way, fundamentals that the rest of the universe seems to have forgotten, but it's now getting a very harsh reminder. The second thing to remember is the Techie fleet is also very vast, though very spread out at the moment, meaning that they will be in a fight of quality versus quantity once again. Yet unlike before, there's no winter to slow down the quality before it crushes the quantity. It is of note that sentient and insectoid ships can actually hold their own against the Techies in a 2-to-1, maybe even 3-to-1, and they would actually call it an even fight at that point. The sentients say this because they have actually switched to using their clunky dreadnoughts, allowing them to put out far more firepower than they could before, making it a straight-up slug match. The insectoids, because their living ships are more agile than most other ships and can regenerate. Though they do regenerate at a much slower rate than the Techies, it's still enough to keep them in the fight much longer. The remaining Fermiant fleet tactics have actually proven effective, yet their lack of numbers and reliance on energy weapons has actually left them wanting, which is why they've been on their heels this entire time. Then there's humanity's fleet, that is primarily focused on slug matches with larger ships to be sure, but has also supplemented their numbers with their drone swarm. This way, they maximize their own efficiency in any environment, and the introduction of the Fermian shield tech actually allows them to take far more hits than they needed to before they would have to withdraw. The mixture of ships and species means that the Techies will not be able to actually focus on one tactic over and over again, seeing one that works. Well, they must adapt, which is something they're actually not good at, even considering what they are. Almost in spite of their appearance, the Techies are very stagnant in what they can do, how they operate, and especially the way their mind works. Utilizing their flexible bodies in their near gelatinous form, they can actually overwhelm most creatures in hand-to-hand combat just by enveloping them. Yet they do have a lot of difficulty in things like mining or breaking things apart like stones, moving heavy material as they'll end up squishing themselves, or even construction, which is difficult with those bodies. As such, they subjugate other species to do their will, eventually learning how to actually create species like their bioships, essentially creating a slave species at birth. After so long, the Techie species is actually known one way, and that is to rule over others, to force others to perform the tasks they are unable to do. With this mindset, it's a very, very safe bet that any threat to this perceived power they have will be faced with and dealt with severely. Hence the reason why they have actually been on a generational search and destroy against the Fermians, and now they have an even bigger threat. With all the new areas now under assault by this confederation of species bearing down on them, the Techies have actually changed from looking for a fight on multiple fronts, which is foolish, to crowning themselves the king of fools, fighting on no less than 12 fronts at once. Humanity helped where it could with the civilians, but the Fermians will have to take care of themselves and their own survivors. The sentients and insectoids aided as well, realizing that they could actually end up with another trading partner or a species that is rich in genetic material. Either way, there's a win-win in the end as long as they're willing to aid these new species. The humans, however, did not give the Techies a chance to rest after the first iteration. After assuring the area secured, they moved on, directly into the next sector. Each time, they offered the Techies a chance to surrender, even offering them to set the terms of their own surrender, and each time, the Techies simply began to attack. No words, just weapons fire. Human energy weapons are adjusted with each time, with each strike making it a different frequency. This way, the Techies cannot just match or oppose the frequency to make sure that the weapons are ineffective. This makes human energy weapons far more effective than anything they had ever faced. The space-based battles do not last long, as the Techie ships simply break. There are a few human losses for sure, but very few, especially in percentages to their enemy. As the fleet approaches the planet, the Techies are once again offered leniency if they surrender the Fermian prisoners. Once again, this is met with fire from the surface. Only once did the Techies actually offer the prisoners, and only once did the Techies try to be sneaky and send up this shuttle. Of course, they didn't expect all the different safety measures that the humans would do. As soon as it was scanned, it was seen that only the ship was real. There was no other life signs. When the human captain asked down to the surface, "What deception are you trying to accomplish?" the ship suddenly accelerated at the human invasion carrier towards the back of the formation. It didn't get very far, as every single ship, human and not, fired on that shuttle at the same time. The massive explosion showed that this was a simple fire ship, a kamikaze. A kamikaze designed to splash a large human ship, which all the humans knew this was a true sign of desperation. After this, the human troops were actually let off the chain. They realized how horrible it was for those slaves on the ground, those that had been taken from the Trekkie, and there was no Techie survivors after they made planetfall. And seeing what they did to the Fermians really pissed them off. The pace of the invasion was fast. So fast it scared the gelatinous crap out of the Techies. Even though they had strengthened their own bodies and extended their lives with technology, they couldn't understand how they could not face down a species that they had subjugated just a few centuries prior. What scared them even more is the obvious drive towards the Techie's homeworld. Even as the entire flank of the territory was falling one planet after another at a speed that was absolutely insane, it's clear that the primary objective is the homeworld. When it was no question that this is where humanity and all the rest were heading, the Techie's leader, a sovereign in their society, had called on every ship in the Empire to assemble in an all-for-nothing battle against the invaders into their territory. As they amassed their fleet, the humans and the other species did the same, as there's no hiding that amount of ships. In a sector the humans called Platea, both fleets would have it out, in a no-holds-barred fight to the death. Each of the fleets arrived, so many vessels that space itself became cluttered. The Techies set their forces up with all their firepower aimed at the largest vessels. Logic dictates that taking out these ships would break the command structure, and it would also take out the biggest weapons first. A good idea if humans only fought that way. The Techie fleet advanced as fast as they could, constantly firing on the large human ships as well as the sentient dreadnoughts and the insectoid hive ships. This would have caused massive damage if the human ships did not already have ships with energy-deflecting shields, or if the remaining Fermian shield ships were not placed in front of the other large vessels. Yet even though they were not making direct hits, this allowed the Techies to advance, to get closer, to be able to bring more weapons into optimal firing range. As they advanced, the shields made it so that the coalition of forces could not actually fire back, not with their main guns. Realizing that only the flagships were being targeted, the rest of the fleet went to Plan B. Since the larger ships can't fire without the shields being dropped, risking catastrophic losses because of all the fire coming in, the smaller ships went to do what they do best. The corvettes throttled up and got within point-blank range, dipping into the formation. These corvettes seemed able to dance between the shots, as though the incoming fire was nothing. They knew where it was coming from. They moved with grace, as incredible speed as well, as though a runner was going through an obstacle course on meth. The integrated systems of linking the human brain with AI into the ship itself allowed them to move as though the ship itself was alive. One could say that since the ship was actually plugged into the brain, and the human runs the ship, then the ship was the human. That's if you follow the logic. And just as they close in and start causing damage, the destroyers did something crazy. They jumped into the formation and utilizing their best short-range weapon, a weapon that nobody thought they'd be able to use. The energy pulse cannons began to run their cyclic rates on fire down the ships, turning each of the ships they fired on into nothing but a hulk of decimated meat in space. As the Techie ships began to adapt to the fire so they could deflect it, the destroyers definitely had another card to play. It wasn't just the missiles and torpedoes that seemed to come out in volleys. It was the ballistic cannons, most of which were either single or multi-barreled, death-spewing rods from hell that seemed to strafe down the side, firing as fast as they can. With each pass, another ship went dark as it was completely perforated, in some cases blown in half, and in some other small cases, well, they just had to hit the bridge or the engine and the ship would go dark. Realizing the danger, many ships of the Techie fleet broke formation. If they didn't, they might explode or go dark. Others were targeted by smaller ships, and this gave the larger ships of the coalition forces an opportunity to strike as they were not being targeted anymore. The larger flagships could now engage with their much larger weapons as the drone swarm dove in, causing even more havoc. At this moment, all the corvettes and destroyers immediately scattered, getting away from the Techie fleet because they knew exactly what was coming. Even in the face of loss, the Techies did not stop, to the point of driving their own ships directly into the ally formation. In desperation, using kamikaze attacks on one dreadnought after another. One dreadnought was destroyed in this attack. A harvester was completely crippled to the point where the Queen was one of the few living life forms still on it. And the humans' current flagship, called Subjugation Annulled, was heavily damaged. Yet, the battle is over. Then, and only then, the Techies contact everyone else. Yet it was clear that they were trying to direct this call to the Fermians as it was in the Fermians' base language. It was a simple message. Please, call off the humans. We surrender. The peace treaty was signed, sealed, and delivered within a human year. The Techies, because of their impertinence, had actually lost a lot of their territory in the negotiations, but they were still alive, and that was the most important part. The Fermians received a very large amount of territory compared to what they had, and this meant the sentients and insectoids would only receive 2 sectors apiece, yet they were content with it. The cost may have seemed high, all things considered, as humanity aided in setting up trade relations before returning to their own territory, retracting all their military assets. Before the humans' return, there was a historical meeting of all the leaders from all the species that would take place, making sure they were all together at the same time. This is when a certain image was captured that really seemed to bring everyone together as a bit of sign of solidarity. Inside the image, one could see the human sector representatives that even had the image taken via drone along with their own cabinet. There was the sentient leaders of all the different species. The insectoid High Queen even made it there, since she had metamorphosized into what the humans call a 15-foot tall MILF. Everybody knew that this had a certain meaning when every single male that looked up at her said, "I'd climb her like a tree." She also had brought along a few of her tertiary queens that had gone through similar metamorphosis, and this new form seemed to calm everyone down a little bit. There was also the Fermian leaders that are actually in negotiation to become full humans again. And of course, the Techies Emperor and its court. It is a very, very full picture, and one would have to stare for a while to actually see and notice everybody. But this one simple image symbolized the end of the conflicts, and everyone prayed the beginning of something new for them all. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on the final chapter of this series. Now before I go, I need to say that today's winner of the contest is Erica Gem, with Julius Boone coming in a close second. I also need to send out some great big thank yous to the supporters of the channel, and those are Sir, Prozac and Pancakes, Brian Kemp, Erica Gem, SS Demon, MTF Guard, Guardian Sage, Joseph Blush, Julius Boone, and Douglas Scarborough. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.